Welcome. Thanks for joining me here on my YouTube channel. I'm really excited. I've got my notebook here today to talk about a topic that is so central to my life and so central to my wellness, and that is my relationship with food. Of all of the things that I share on the internet, I find that what I share on the way I eat and nourish my body is the thing that people seem to come to me with the most curiosity. I never really anticipated that happening. I've always been more of like the intangible components of wellness, like the spiritual components of wellness. But that being said, I have found in the last year that my relationship with food and the way that I nourish my body has been the greatest like catalyst for my spiritual wellness and my spiritual evolution. One of my favorite books, it's called The Shamanic Path to Quantum Consciousness. It talks about this concept that like the root, the physical, the body, the most outward layer is the vehicle for everything else that builds on top of it or everything else that builds within it. And so to have a nourished, healthy, vital body means that I get to have a healthy, nourished, vital spirit. I had received a lot of questions about food, about plant-based eating, about my relationship with food. And so here we are with said questions. And I'll just get right on into them. The first question, how did you start down the plant-focused path? I started eating with some intention, eating consciously, when I was a junior in college. So I was about 21 years old. I was within my yoga teacher training program at this time, and my mother, who was 20 years deep into the holistic wellness world, had created a keto cleanse for her clients and asked me and my roommates to try it out essentially. And so that was really the first time that I brought really keyed in attention to what I was putting in my body. Previous to that, I was eating a lot of pasta-based dishes. Pasta was kind of the grounds for everything that I was eating. For most of my life, again, I was 21 years old at this time, I held the belief that I did not like cooked vegetables except for corn. So I really didn't eat any vegetables unless they were cut up fresh veggies that I was eating with some sort of dip. But that was kind of the extent of my eating vegetables. I didn't really like salads. So I was eating a lot of grains, a lot of fruit. I've always been a fruit person, and meat. And so that was what consisted of my diet. We did this 3-week keto cleanse. Wow, I'm kind of digging this light, honestly. We did this 3-week keto cleanse, and so we were eating meat and vegetables. And that was essentially it. I was also eating dairy while on this keto cleanse, which is not always the way that people do keto, but it is the way that I decided to take the cleanse. And for the first time in my life, having taken out processed foods, I realized and felt super viscerally what it felt like to remove those processed foods. During these 3 weeks, me and my roommate started getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and going to these 5:30 core power sculpt yoga classes. And that was the first time in my life that I felt vital and energized enough in the mornings to do anything. Before that, I was suffering from chronic fatigue. I had the most challenging time getting myself out of bed in the morning and staying awake during the day, during school. And so transitioning what I was eating towards whole foods was my first big shift in realizing that what I ate was the main factor or the main influencer of how I felt during my day, particularly with my energy levels. So that 3-week period was my first interaction with what I would say whole foods, so taking out the processed foods in my diet. And then after that, I was like, okay, it's not even that I want to continue onto this, but this is the path. Like, there is not another path for me. And so that really is what kicked it off. And then I noted that over the last then 4 years since that experience, my consumption of meat has just continued to dwindle. I lived for a year in a house with, well, actually 2 of my roommates were at the very least vegetarian. And so even just living in that environment then too was influencing me to eat less meat. One was like strongly in the ethics of vegetarianism, and then the other was really aware of the environmental impacts of the meat industry and the overconsumption of meat, especially in the United States. And so I had a lot of good influence there to start transitioning toward a more plant-focused diet, letting go of even more of the meat. Okay, next question. Are animal products beneficial? I am not a doctor. I'm not a dietitian. I will say that there are certain animal products that do make me feel really great. One of them for me is eggs. I eat a lot of eggs. Yeah, I'm gonna say they make me feel great. Really high quality butter makes me feel good. I really emphasize eating a lot of fats in my diet, and so I use a lot of butter when I'm cooking. And then bone broth or collagen has been a really huge food for me that feels really good for my energy and the way I eat. Again, I don't have any science to back any of that up. I'm just going based off of how I feel. Thoughts on restrictive eating and its impact on our overall health mentally. So I think that for a long time I was afraid of restricting myself from eating meat, and what I have discovered as I have focused on eating plants as like the main component of my diet is that it doesn't feel like I have to restrict myself from eating processed foods or animal products because of how good I feel mentally, physically, and emotionally when I am eating the plant-focused diet. So really it doesn't even feel restrictive. It feels like very open, very nourishing, very loving, very exciting, energizing, every positive word that I can think of. Like I don't feel like I have to restrict myself because I am so aware of how good I feel when I am eating whole, nourishing foods. I used to reward myself with food. I'm not gonna say that that's a good or a bad thing, but I would be like, okay, like, good job, you did a hard day's work. Go get some French fries from McDonald's because you love that. And now I find myself instead being like, I had a great hard day's work. I'm gonna go to a grocery store and I'm gonna get all my favorite ingredients to make my favorite soup. And I'm gonna prepare this beautiful meal for my dinner. I'm gonna have, some beautiful fruit or something as my sweetness at the end. So just the way that I now view what it is I'm eating, like the reward or like what I get most excited about is eating foods that make me feel good and that taste good. In what ways did eating plant-based benefit your mental health? This is a good question. And so kind of similar to what I've been talking about this whole time of like starting to eat a plant-focused diet made me feel incredible in my energy, in my body. It made me love the way I look. I love the way I feel. I love the energy that I have. And so I think that at the very basic, just like my experiential level, eating plant-based gave me more energy. And I noted that being chronically fatigued and having chronic exhaustion was a root of so much of my negative mental experience. I had felt so anxious for so long, in part because I was so exhausted all the time that I didn't feel like I could do what I wanted to do. Both, like, I couldn't do hobbies, I couldn't socialize in the way that I wanted to because I was so tired all the time. I couldn't make things that I wanted to. I felt like I couldn't be creative. I felt too tired to exercise. There were so many things that I wanted to do, even big life things like leaving jobs or like having the energy to start a business. Feeling so exhausted made me feel so upset and depressed and anxious because I had all of these things that I wanted to do in my mind, but I didn't feel like I had the energy to go out and do them. Okay, the next question, my favorite one. Is the recommended protein amount a myth because it seems impossible on a plant-based diet? I took a seminar with a Dr. Zach Bush. Okay, I have to laugh. I'm recording this on a different day because I got a little lost in the sauce of that last question. So I'm gonna be a little bit more concise here. At the end of the day, the recommended protein amount is not necessarily a myth. A seminar that I got to learn from, the doctor explained that he would suggest 20 to 40 grams of protein a day. The FDA right now suggests about 40 grams of protein per day. And so while the recommended amount of protein is not necessarily a myth, the myth is that animal proteins are like the superior form of protein intake. Back in the day when I was not super on the plant-focused train, I was like, yeah, protein, chicken, and like peanut butter. Essentially, this Dr. Zach Bush explained that that's just not the case. There are great protein sources in vegetables, beans, legumes, nuts, seeds, and mushrooms. He also explained that the average American is consuming 170% of the recommended protein amount, so about 100 grams. And he explains that the overconsumption of animal products is actually what's causing this incredibly vast pandemic of health concerns that are all stemming from inflammation in the gut. This study had been done on how animal-based food and plant-based food are digested by the body. Animal-based proteins from mouth to colon, 14 hours. Plant-based, 90 minutes. And so while those animal products are not inherently bad or harmful to the body, eating them in such excess creates this backup in the intestines. So again, it's taking 14 hours. If you don't give it enough time to pass through, the body's gonna start backing it up into the colon or into the intestines. And what happens then is this process that, what a word this is, putrefaction. Essentially, the animal-based proteins start fermenting in the intestinal tract. And this fermentation process gives off two waste products, hydrogen sulfide and ammonia, I think, both that are literally like hazmat chemicals, like will eat through anything. And that putrefaction process, or that fermentation, those waste products are starting to break down the lining of the intestinal tract, and that is letting all of this bacteria and all of this waste leak into the bloodstream, which causes a lot of inflammation. The second injury that this overconsumption of animal products can cause is a damage to the organs of the body that detox the blood, the kidneys and the liver. Pretty much when the body takes in animal proteins, it can't just like use that protein and put it right into the protein of like building a muscle. It needs to take the animal protein, break it down into glucose, build that into amino acids, which are then the building blocks of proteins that are made in our bodies. Our bodies make our own protein. And so that breakdown from protein into glucose and then up into amino acids, that's called catabolism. And again, while catabolism is not necessarily a bad process, the body can definitely handle this process. It does give off a waste product called urea, and those excretory organs of the body are able to process urea, but when we're eating meat in such high amounts, those detox organs just get so taxed. And so like kidney and liver disease are super, super prevalent in cultures that eat meat as the focus of 3 meals a day, which is a lot of places, westernized places. So at the end of the day, while meat itself is not inherently damaging to the body, eating it in incredible excess is very damaging to the body. And so yeah, it was a cool seminar. I feel like it really affirmed for me that like animal products can definitely be, and I believe are definitely a beneficial part of a balanced diet. Eating plant focused can feel really good for the body. It can be a really powerful way to decrease inflammation in the body, which I have found in my experience was the cause of all of my chronic fatigue and my brain fog. So yeah, that's better. The cool thing about this is that meat's not bad for you. What's bad is eating something in such excess that your body has no capacity to handle it in a healthy way. If you hang out on my Instagram, you watch my Wellness Wednesdays. I did a Wellness Wednesday topic on returning to our evolutionary nature, returning to our human nature. And if we think about the way that we've evolved as humans, think about how accessible meat was. Maybe we raise a flock of chickens. We cannot be butchering a chicken every single day. We would run out of food so fast. I think about sometimes people going to Buffalo Wild Wings and eating 50 wings. Like, in what world would a human ever be able to access 25 chickens for one meal? What? Thank you for asking me these questions. I'm so grateful to receive them from you. I'm so grateful that you want to have these conversations with me. I love you. I love you. And if you have any other questions or comments or things that you think about or things that shocked you, let me know in the comments. I would love to continue these conversations with you. Cheers to our wellness, y'all. Cheers to our health, our vitality. Cheers to plant-based foods. I love you. Have an amazing day. Eat some plants. Bye, babe.